Hello, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Chicken Box. I'm your host, Jay. I'm in a different place right now. I'm traveling, so I apologize for the background. So it's 133 years. The Afro is celebrating their next anniversary of being the oldest Black-owned media business in the United States, which is no small feat. So thank you for joining us. This week, we do have a very interesting guest. Miss Nicole Austin-Hillery, who is the president and CEO of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. Let me read a little bit of her bio here. Nicole Austin-Hillery is a civil rights leader whose transformative work in the legal and policy arenas has been instrumental in working to uphold justice, shift systems, and change lives on both a national and global scale. As president and CEO of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, or CBCF, she leads the organization in advancing the global Black community through impactful public policy research, education, and leadership development in all areas where systemic change is most needed, from the halls of Congress to corporate boardrooms and beyond. She was named Essence Magazine's 2024 Power 40 list member as one of the most influential people in business in the government and policy category. She is a bridge builder. Ms. Austin-Hillery skillfully connects private, public, and corporate sectors to channel resources towards shared visions of progress on behalf of the CBCF. So her bio is longer than that, so I did cut it a little short. So welcome to the show, Nicole. How are you?
I'm great, Jay. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. So thank you for joining us or joining me this week. So a lot of people may have heard of the Congressional Black Caucus, but I don't know if they know that there's a difference between the caucus and the foundation here. So can you give a little bit of background as to what the CBCF is and how that got started? And then we'll talk more.
Absolutely. And congratulations to the Afro on your historical standing. It is amazing, and we here at CBCF are so glad to be a part of it, and so appreciate you having us on the show and giving us some time to talk about our work and our upcoming annual legislative conference. And hello to all of your listeners. So for those people who aren't familiar with the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, we were actually founded 49 years ago. Next year will be our 50th anniversary. And we were founded by those original members of the Congressional Black Caucus back in 1976, who recognized something really key that was missing in Washington. And that was the fact that young Black interns were almost non existent. And that was because they didn't have opportunities. Most of us know internships are usually unpaid. For those of us who have had the opportunity to be interns in college, they're usually unpaid. And to get internships in Washington during that time, you had to have a connection. Your parents had to know a senator or a member of Congress. And then, even when you got that opportunity, you had to have money. You had to have a place to live, a way to eat, a way to pay for your bus fare, because this was, I think, Metro was in its early days then. And we realized that because of those impediments, young Black people were not having those same opportunities, which meant that our leadership pipeline was not being developed and was not being fed regularly. So those members said, we need a foundation that can close the gap and level the playing field. And so they created the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. So that was one of the reasons. Secondly, they said, we need a Black think tank. This was before the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies was created. And they said, we don't have a place to go where a public policy institute is focused solely on those issues of concern to Black America. We need that. So that was the second goal of the foundation. And then the third goal was to provide educational information and resources to the Black community, so that policy papers, so that tools to use when you were doing grassroots advocacy in your own communities, you could access them. And that's why we were started. And now, 49 years later, we put more Black interns on Capitol Hill than any other organization, but our internships have expanded. We also create and offer fellowship opportunities. We offer scholarships to young people who are going through college, to young people who are pursuing law school, medical school. And our internships are more varied. Not only are they for young people who are trying to get into leadership opportunities on Capitol Hill, We have internships for young people who are trying to go into corporate America to be leaders there. We call those our C-suite internships. We are also working on providing internships in other areas such as labor, civil rights, social justice, philanthropy, because we believe that the Black leadership pipeline needs to touch every system that exists in this country. And so that's who we are. And we've been doing that work for 49 years. And our mission is simply this, Jay. It is to empower the global Black community. And we try to do so through those three areas. And we are out in communities. We do community conversations across the country. We've been in Atlanta to talk about voting. We've been in Tulsa to talk about reparations and reparative justice. And we want to make sure that our work around being a Black think tank and our work around providing opportunities for the next generation of Black leaders will continue on for the next 50 years.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. So one, thank you for the clarification, but I think understanding what the CBCF's mission is, I think is really kind of a powerful thing to know. And it's a powerful statement. I mean, this idea of not just touching Black folks on a local level, but also globally, I think is really profound. So I do have to ask, have you seen I mean, there are a lot of young Black folks who are sort of, there's always that sort of generational shift where it's, you're too young to vote, but you have a lot of, maybe you're starting to realize you're getting out into the world and you're like, oh, okay, taxes come out of my check. So I should probably know where these things are, these laws are being written. I should understand this. And so we get that generational shift of, like, for instance, Gen Z is now, firmly in the voting age and things like that. Are you seeing a larger swell of young Black folks who want to be involved in not only just understanding these things, but want to get these internships, want to be in these boardrooms and things like that, that has increased over time? Does it feel like it's staying the same? Is the interest, does it feel different, or how have you seen it?
Oh, it is absolutely increasing, Jay. And let me give you just one data point. Our Leadership Institute, we track the number of applicants that we have for our internships and fellowships. We have seen in just this last cohort alone, and we have cohorts. We have summer cohorts, fall cohorts, spring cohorts for our internships. And we have seen just in our last cohort application process that our numbers have grown exponentially. I always tell everyone I would love if I could give away 3,000 internships and put 3,000 young Black people into internships on the Hill in C-suites. But we are able to do a good number, but we've seen that number grown. So in our last cohort, we had about 3,000 applicants for about a little less than 40 spaces. So our young people are absolutely standing up and saying, we want to be a part of the solution. We're not waiting for our elders to be the change makers. We believe we have the capacity, we have the appetite, we have the passion to be change makers. And we want to take advantage of these opportunities that are going to allow us to be prepared. And I will tell you, when our young people get through our internship programs, they are very focused in terms of what they want to do next. Many of them want to go on to law school. Many of them are very clear-eyed about running for public office. Many of them are very clear-eyed about going into corporations and into public service. So yes, those numbers are growing, the appetite is growing, and that's why the work that we do is so critically important, because we don't want any young person to not have these opportunities, regardless of race, regardless of economics, regardless of what your mom and dad did or who they know. We want everyone to have these opportunities because we believe that future leaders come from every sector in this country, and we want to give them all a chance.
Excellent, excellent. I'm glad. I'm glad to hear that the numbers are rising. That makes me feel good, just because obviously the political environment is interesting right now. So it is, yeah, to say the least. But it's nice to see that young Black folks really feel like they want to be connected, not just as bystanders on the outside, but really sort of making changes, like you said, to be change makers very, very much internally.
Yeah, and that's our history, right, Jay? That's our history.
Exactly. And it's interesting because I always think of sort of these sort of generational change makers as being a sort of a two-pronged effort, right? You do need people on the outside to criticize and to push at the system as you need it, as you want it to go, but you also need people internally to help make those connections to the outside. So it's good to know that you have people, especially 3,000. I mean, of those 40 spots, you still have all these young people who didn't make it, but it doesn't change their interests, right? So
No,
they're going to
no.
try to do it a different way, which is great.
And we encourage them to come back to us because we want to
Right.
provide as many opportunities as we can.
Excellent. So I want to slide the conversation a little bit here and talk about, you have an annual legislative conference, right, that you call
Yes.
the ALC.
Yes.
And this year's theme is Made for This Moment: Power, Policy, and Progress. Look, that is about as perfect, perfect, pitch perfect of a title as you can get. Made for This Moment. Tell us, what does that mean for the CBCF specifically?
Okay, so look, Jay, let's have some real talk.
Right.
We are in a moment in this country where our blackness is being attacked, our history is being attacked, where there are efforts underway basically to erase our community. And so we believed that we had to land on a theme that made it clear that we're not going anywhere, that our people are strong and resilient, and that we are made for this moment when we have to stand up, stand out, speak up, and speak out to protect not only our history and our past, but our future and the future generations. So that is what that theme is all about. And I have been saying to everyone that will listen to me, Jay, that this moment, this annual legislative conference, is probably one of the most important ones that we've ever had because we need to have a coming together, Jay. We have so many disparate conversations going on and efforts underway for our communities to figure out, what do we do right now? How do we deal with the daily barrage of attacks, verbal and otherwise, the changes that are going on in our communities, the takeover of law enforcement in the District of Columbia, the immigration forces that are coming into communities and just, grabbing people writ large. Folks are saying, how do we come together? That is what the annual legislative conference presents. It presents an opportunity for all of us, no matter who you are, where you are, whether you're an elected official, whether you're a grassroots activist, whether you're a mom who's doing a carpool in your community. This is a space where everyone can come together, where we will have brain trusts and issue forums, over 100, to try to focus in on the myriad issues that our community is dealing with right now. And you get to do it with members of Congress who are the leaders for Black America. And we
Right.
have over 60 members of the Congressional Black Caucus now. You are going to be walking in the same hallways with them. You're going to have the opportunity to stop them in the hallways, have conversations. They're going to be on panels. They're going to be experts and scholars who are going to be on panels. And folks are going to be able to have conversations and question. But not only question and have conversations, but to strategize so that when we go back to our communities, whether you live in California or whether you live in Massachusetts or somewhere in between, you're going to be able to walk out of this annual legislative conference and say, we as Black America have come together. We've talked about strategies. We've talked about messaging that we all need to be utilizing across the country so that we are integrated and interconnected. And everyone then will have a chance to lead and be a change maker in their own communities. That's what this ALC is about. And that's what we mean when we say we are made for this moment. We are a resilient people. History shows us that we can overcome. History shows us that we know how to strategize, even in moments of darkness and despair. And so this is a reminder of who we are, what we're made of, but also a reminder of what work we have to do and put in place so that we can move forward.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. So I guess my question to you, I think, obviously working to take people inside of our community and, get their excitement for demanding this change and everything else is obviously paramount in us surviving this. I am wondering, do you find that there are other organizations for other groups that are doing similar work that the CBCF is doing? Let's say for Latin communities or Asian communities or for women very specifically or anything like that. Do you find that there are other groups that you guys end up teaming up with? Because I feel like the moment right now, it is so important to be sort of focused in our community but we can't fix this alone, right? Because the problem is so great at this point. Do you find that other organizations are kind of doing similar things? Do you hear from them and say like, hey, can we strategize together and things like that? I'm just curious.
Absolutely, Jay. And let me tell you, I have always, as a leader, believed that there is power in numbers and that
Right.
groups that are similarly situated and that are similarly in struggle have to work together, have to share information, have to be mutually supportive. To that end, we have sister organizations that are focused similarly to the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. The Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute is one of those organizations. Apex, which focuses on the Asian community and Pacific Islander community, is one of those organizations. I meet with the heads of those two organizations every month. We meet,
Okay.
we
Wow.
share
Okay.
information, we talk about what is going on, and we talk about how we can be mutually supportive of our organizations, because those of us who are put into the other category in this country recognize that we have similar walks and similar struggles, but we also
Absolutely.
recognize that our strength is in supporting one another, finding where our mutual interests lie, and pushing each other forward. And so that is a part and parcel of how we strategize in this moment. But there are also, Jay, not only are there those similar organizations to what we do here at the foundation, because both those organizations offer internships, fellowships, scholarships as well, because they are also trying to ensure that the next generation of leaders from their communities are supported and have opportunities. But I also want to talk about the other collaborations that are important and necessary in this moment, because we know our Black community is not monolithic. There are organizations like the
Right.
NAACP, the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund, the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law. All of these organizations, these major civil rights organizations, are doing work. And we are all talking. We are all mutually supporting one another. We are all strategizing about what we need to do. And that's what's really key in this moment. So I want folks to really understand, we're not out here just all trying to have separate walks. We are trying to be very focused and strategize about how we need to come together to support our Black communities, because it's not about just the foundation. It's not about any one individual organization or any one individual leader. It is about our communities. And so you will see those organizations represented at the annual legislative conference. Their leaders will be on our panels. Their policy experts will be on our panels. This, again, is a moment for all of us to come together, to put aside name, brand, reputation, ego. We don't have time for that in our communities right now. And what I'm excited about and what I am emboldened about is that I think everyone has gotten that memo. And I think folks are going to see the manifestation of that thinking and that collaboration when they come together for ALC this year.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the saying "meet the moment," and
Mm-hmm.
I think I look at the times that are going on right now, and then people often say, well, you hear comments like, well, before this, well, this
Mm-hmm.
is what I would have done during the time of conversations about
Mm.
apartheid and stuff like that.
Yes,
But it's like, this is your version of that. Like, where are
exactly.
you in that moment? And it's good to see that. I mean, it's sad to see that some people don't meet that moment and don't realize what it is. But it's good to hear that organizations like the CBCF are so hard focused on making sure that young people have an avenue to meet that moment. Because,
Exactly.
as one of our listeners just pointed out, it starts with youth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's so easy to just be like, young people don't really know what's going on, but they are living in the results of legislations and of policies by older folks every single day,
Yes.
whether they realize it or not.
Mm.
And they tend to figure it out. Like,
Of
it's like
course,
with
they're
little
smart,
kids.
Jay. They're super
Right.
smart.
Right, exactly. It's like with little kids, like they know more than you think they do. Like, and so
Exactly.
young people are not completely oblivious to the world. And it sounds like, especially the 3,000 young people you have applying to your organization for internships, are very much aware of the moment and what their role potentially in that is.
Yes.
So I want to talk about some of the big issues that you guys are going to be tackling at the ALC. Um, Again, the annual leadership conference, or legislative conference, excuse me.
Yes.
Um, you want to talk about how do we build wealth in our communities and close the economic gaps. Can you speak to that? Because right now, I think one of the things that is very obvious to a lot of people, whether you understand sort of macroeconomics, is irrelevant to this, but a lot of people understand sort of pocketbook issues, like, hey, the price of groceries is going up, my electric bills are
Those
going
eggs,
up.
right, Jay?
Right,
Those
the eggs
eggs.
are, I don't know, what are they, $50 a carton now? I mean, it's insane. And then you have obviously you have some politicians who go out and say outlandish things like, oh, the prices are coming down by 1,500%, which is mathematically impossible. But okay, but with all of that sort of noise, what is the CBCF's answer to how do you deal with these economic gaps as they are widening, not just from a day-to-day perspective, but like from the black community to the white community? Everybody is feeling this, but obviously people with less money are going to feel it far harder. So what is the CBF or CBCF's thoughts on this? Or like, what is the avenue in which you're working with this?
And let me do some level setting, Jay, before I get into that specific question, which is this. I want folks to understand that when you are talking about protecting the Black community and advancing the Black community, there is not one issue that has primacy over another. You cannot talk about protecting and advancing the Black community by only focusing on the Black wealth agenda. You have to also focus on housing. You have to focus on health and health disparities. You have to focus on education. You have to focus on voting, because all of these issues are inextricably linked. Not one survives or advances without the other. So I wanna set that context so that we all understand that is how we approach the annual legislative conference. So you are going to be able to come to the conference and follow panels and brain trusts that focus on closing the Black wealth gap and Black economics. But you're also going to have tracks of programs and issue forums that are going to be looking at housing and that are going to be looking at education. And we do this because we want people to understand how these are all linked and how we don't have the luxury of picking and choosing one versus the other in order to protect and advance our community. We have to look at them all under one umbrella, understanding that we have an obligation to focus on each one and to figure out what our needs are within each of those categories and what the solutions are that we need to problem solve in each of those categories. So with that level setting being done, Jay, let me go back to your original question, which is about the Black wealth gap and what are we doing there? We know that for all of our communities, everyone wants to know, how do they do the basic thing, which is take care of their families? If you can't take care of your family, if you can't put food on the table, if you can't put a roof over your head, everything else falls to the wayside. Okay. But that again, Jay, speaks to the links between all of this. You gotta have quality housing, gotta have quality healthcare. But we're going to be talking about what communities can be doing to try to close that wealth gap. What people can do, I like to call, in terms of creating citizen lobbyists. There are things that people have to be doing in their own communities, working with their local mayors, working with their state legislators. Those are some of the kinds of things we're going to be talking about too. I want people to understand that we come together in Washington because this is the pinnacle of national leadership. But in this moment, we also have to think about devolution, which is issues and problem solving falling down ballot into the states, into the local governments. So that's part of what we're going to be talking about is how do you maximize opportunities for change that exist on the local level, that exist with your mayors, that exist in your local townships and your local precincts, because that's where people have to focus. What are the kinds of legislative efforts or policies that are being put in place or that are being debated that will change what kinds of jobs are available to people, that will allow them to have economic and wealth opportunities? What are some of the changes that are being made to pricing? What are some of the changes that are being made to businesses so that businesses can offer better pricing, or so that businesses can build and create stores in the communities where our people live? That's how we're going to be focusing in on that issue, not just what's happening at the national level, because let's be clear, there are challenges at the national level right now. The party that is in majority is a party that is not as focused on some of these Black wealth issues. So we have to arm
Correct.
ourselves and get focused on what can happen where we do still have power, where we do still have access. And so, again, so much of this, Jay, is about providing tools and creating tools that individuals can take back to their own communities. So we want to teach people how to do that. We want to tell them, here's how you get in touch with your local electeds. Here's how you form groups in your own communities. Here's how you get your local sororities and fraternities and civic organizations to get engaged around these issues. So that's how we're going to be talking about the Black wealth issues. But we're also going to be having representatives on panels from corporations, because we can't leave them out of this. Corporations have a lot to do with the systems around wealth and economics and how they operate in this country. So we're going to have those people in place too, to talk about how they're showing up in your communities, and to give you opportunities to talk to them about what your needs are in your communities and where you need them to show up and what kind of products you need them to provide and what kind of resources you need them to provide. So it's through those various options that we're going to be looking at that larger issue of closing the Black wealth gap and helping to empower our people when it comes to wealth and economics.
Excellent. Excellent. I mean, it's interesting. The sort of the Black wealth gap, obviously, historically has always been an issue. And I would argue a lot of it is on purpose, obviously. And
that's another. Can I come back on for us to have that conversation, Jay?
Hey,
That's another
like,
conversation.
that's several episodes. Trust me, it's a 12-part series. Maybe we'll work on that. But so the economic wealth gaps are, since forever have always been there. And I am interested in your point about having these corporations there, because I do think they are part of the conversation. And I think that they can be a part of the conversation in good ways and bad ways, right? And I'm interested, how do you, like, when you have, I assume you've probably done that before, have had these, or maybe you haven't, I don't know, had some of these corporations come and talk about economics and things like that, or the wealth gap, maybe in past conferences, I'm not sure. But I'm interested to know, do you find that young people are maybe more apt to push back a little bit? Are they more open to that? Because there does seem to be a sentiment of, like, understanding that some corporations, not obviously all, have played a role in sort of helping to keep the Black wealth gap larger than maybe it even needs to be, by sort of playing favorites to things and, maybe not hiring certain people and things like that. And I'm wondering, do you see, are they pretty accepting of it, or is there pushback from young people? I'd be curious to know.
Well, I think there's a couple things going on, Jay. First, let me be clear about this. We have many corporations who support the foundation. And these are corporations who have been very clear in saying that they see the value in supporting young Black people and future leaders. They see the value in supporting these issues, and they want to be around the table with us working on these issues. Okay. And I applaud those entities that want to be a part of the solution. The young people see power in having leadership opportunities in all of these different rooms, Jay.
Okay.
They may have issues with different entities. And I'm talking about entities across all systems.
Absolutely.
I'll give you an example. When I was a young, lawyer in training, I interned in the Manhattan DA's office. And I got a lot of pushback from friends because I had spent the early part of my career before even going to law school working in civil rights. And as you said in my bio, that's been my career. But I will tell you what I was thinking as a young person was, even though there's a lot of criticisms and problems with district attorneys' offices because they prosecute so many people in our communities, my thinking was, if people like me who have a civil rights focus, who want to protect our communities, are not in those rooms and around those tables, how will we ever get them to change?
Agreed.
And
Absolutely.
so I think many of our young people have that same sentiment. They want to be the corporate leaders so that the way corporations show up, so that the way corporations make decisions, so that the way corporations decide to be in communities and support communities can look different and be different. And that is what we mean at the foundation when we talk about developing the next generation of leaders. We're not just talking about developing leaders in one area or two areas. We want the next generation of leaders to saturate every system that impacts how this country runs. So that means the legal system, the criminal justice system, the corporate system, the educational system, the housing system. That is where and how we will have true empowerment when we have our voices around all of those tables. Otherwise, we're not being seen, we're not being heard, and we then don't have the power to create the kind of change we want to see in those systems. So that is
No,
what I'm seeing and hearing from our young leaders to be.
no, I think that's a very good perspective. Thank you for that. So it's interesting because that sort of seems to mirror exactly what happened, and I don't want to talk too deeply about very specific politics, but that is sort of what seemed to happen in the what was it 2020 race,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Like looking at Kamala Harris coming as being a former district attorney and then attorney general in California, and it was kind of like it was that immediate pushback, and then over time when she's running for president years later, people are like, oh, I took a look at this information. Oh, right, you cannot change the system just solely from the outside, and she actually made these actually huge changes internally, and then people go,
Yeah,
oh, okay,
that's a great
now I get it.
example. Great
Yeah.
example
So
of
so
exactly
yeah,
that point.
yeah, I think over time, when you start to look into the details of this, and that was a great answer, thank you, is you realize, again, like we had mentioned earlier, pushing from the outside is incredibly important, and it may be even the most important, to be honest. But you need people internal, you need internal allies to bridge the gap. You got to have somebody to hold hands with
Exactly.
once you get close, right? So that's a very good point. Thank
Yeah,
you.
we have to have a multi-pronged game plan, Jay, just
That's
to
right.
put it simply.
Yeah, you just literally cannot fix the system by just banging on the door and be like, "Could you please fix it?"
We
That
cannot,
unfortunately,
we cannot. And the whole
yeah,
concept of building a leadership pipeline is about opening doors where they had previously been closed.
exactly.
There have been doors that we've not been able to, to push open. There have been ceilings that we've not been able to shatter.
Right,
And it's only when we've been able to get into those spaces that we've been able to see movement. We have more Black leaders in corporate America now than we ever have had historically. We have
right,
more Black leaders in banking than we've ever had historically, which is why programs around home loans, programs around first time home buyers, programs around making sure that certain stores or in certain communities, why we've seen those kinds of changes. If we're not around all of these tables, and let's be clear, all the leaders around all of these tables have to be talking to one another. Okay, it's
right,
not, you cannot work singularly in banking or work singularly in elected politics. All of these folks have to be talking together, but we've got to have representation around all of those tables to create real change.
right.
Otherwise, we are siloed, and amassing real power and amassing real support for our communities is about breaking down silos.
Wonderfully stated. And look, if you want another real world example of this, look at the mayor of Baltimore, where we are, the
Hmm.
mayor of Chicago, right? Brandon Scott and Brandon Johnson, respectively. Both of them not just working from the outside, but also very much working on the inside and making massive progress in both of these cities. To the point where it is inarguable that they have made changes that have been nothing short of extremely progressive and things like that. And you can't just do that from the outside.
No, no,
We're
no.
often not listened to from the outside, unfortunately.
Exactly, exactly. And let me underscore another example too of the kind of work that we do at the foundation in terms of providing opportunities. With as you talk about those two mayors, particularly thinking about the mayor of Baltimore, it makes me think about this. We want to give opportunities to people who are coming from all walks of life, because it's not only being around the table, it's also about having people with different life experiences around those tables that brings different perspectives to the thinking and the problem solving. That is equally important. So, within our program, we have young people who may come from a household where mom and dad is a doctor and a lawyer, or we may have young people who come from a household where it's, like my household, where it was a single parent, female-headed household, and that was my experience, seeing that kind of leadership, having that kind of example set. We've got to have all of those perspectives around the table. So it's about experience and having people share those experiences and allowing that to impact decision making, because that's something we also need within our leadership pipeline.
Right. Not just diversity, but also
Hmm.
diversity of experience, of life
Exactly.
experience.
Exactly.
Agreed. Like you said, not all Black people are monolith.
Nope.
So, Black people are not a monolith at all. So, yeah, you need Black people. Like, you can't just say, here's 50 Black people. They've all had the same life experience. That is 100% not true.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
it's important for us to create spaces for that, to create
Right.
spaces for different perspectives as well.
Excellent. And what does that look like as far as your students or not students, but your young people who come in, this 3,000 group of students? What does that look like? Is it from? I assume it's all over the country.
Hmm.
Does that traverse sort of socioeconomic? How do you and how does that work for those 40 people that you actually place? Do you try to pull from a varied group of socioeconomic status, rural versus city, that sort of thing? How do you guys work that out?
Well, Jay, let me tell you, our Leadership Institute is the part of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation under which the internships, the fellowships, and the scholarships are all housed. Okay, that is the mechanism through which we operate all of those programs. And our Leadership Institute is amazing. We have members of our team who literally go around the country. Our senior director of our Leadership Institute spends myriad hours traveling across the country, meeting with university presidents, going to HBCUs, going to predominantly white institutions where there are significant percentages of Black students, because we want to bring our services and our opportunities to them. So we make sure that we are covering the country so that as many students as possible know about who we are, what we do, and what opportunities we have to offer to them. And through our application process, we have a blind process. We want people to talk about their experiences, to talk about their backgrounds, to talk about their academic interests, what they want to do. So we make sure through that whole process that we are considering everything: grades, where you're from, what is it you want to pursue, how you're having an impact. So we find, Jay, that every cohort is filled with such a diverse group of students who have different backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds, different, political backgrounds, different academic backgrounds, come from different communities. And that is because we really are centered on making sure that we do our job of getting around the country and letting all of these young people know that this is an opportunity for them. It's not just for students who come from the most elite universities or who come from certain geographic regions. It's for everyone. And I'll tell you anecdotally, Jay, for every cohort, our leaders all do a meet and greet, and we talk to the young people as they're starting. And I always have a president's session with them, and I always tell them my own personal story. And all the interns, every intern has come through since, and during my tenure knows, I'm very proud of saying that I grew up in a single parent household, and I grew up in public housing. I always tell them I'm a PK, not a preacher's kid, but a project kid. But I tell them that because I want them to know and to see and understand that many of us have had varied backgrounds, but we all can get to a place of leadership. We all can get to a place of accomplishment. And I will tell you, every time I say that, Jay, there are always like 4 or 5 students in the room who say, "Me too, Nicole. I grew up in the projects." And we're all very, very proud of where we're
Right.
from and where we grew up. Because I tell people, make no bones about it. I grew up in a community that was full of supportive people, where we kept our doors and windows open. Everybody knew you. Everybody felt like they had a hand in raising us and supporting supporting us. And those stories are as important as our young people who had the privilege of, being from a family that had a house on Martha's Vineyard that was part of their family history that they got to
Right.
visit and be a part of every summer. All of those stories are part of the patchwork quilt of what makes Black America and what makes Black America great. And that's really, again, Jay, what the annual legislative conference is about. It is about bringing all of our folks together with these different experiences and these different backgrounds, because it takes all of us telling our stories, sharing our experiences, communicating about what's going on in our various communities across the country to problem solve and to figure out what do we need to do to uphold, uplift, protect our history, protect our culture, but to problem solve and create ways forward for the next generation in our communities and the next generation of leaders. That really is what being made for this moment is about. And that's really what forward thinking is about for our communities and the work that we're doing at the conference.
Excellent. So, one last question I have about the conference, which is on the topic of the health of the democracy, right? The United States and its democratic state, small d Democrat here, is in peril. I mean, I think I don't think that's hyperbolic at all, unfortunately. What is the sentiment inside your organization and young people that you're dealing with? How do they see it? Do they feel like do they realize that this is sort of an existential threat? I imagine they do. But do they feel like this is an existential threat to their way of life? And do they see it as what I would say is potentially an opportunity, as dark as that kind of sounds, but an opportunity to shift the country in ways that it is long fundamentally needed to be changed, right? So we're kind of salting the earth almost, is what's going on. Do they see it as an opportunity to rebuild into a more equitable country? Or like, how do they see it? I mean, there's a million ways to see this, but I'm just curious what the conference is aiming at. What do young people where they seem to be on this, or your thoughts personally?
Yes. So let me say this first and foremost, Jay, and I'm very clear-eyed about this, and we're clear-eyed about this at the foundation. This democracy, which is an experiment, I like to remind people, democracy is an experiment, which is why we see it growing and changing. This democracy is part of the fabric of who we are as Black America. We helped to create this democracy and build it. We may not have started off the way we wanted to in this democracy, but it would not exist. It would not be the democracy that it grew into becoming, that was providing more equitable opportunity, that was providing opportunities for more voices to be heard. None of that would have been possible without the contributions and the input of Black America. So even in this moment, Jay, where it feels like democracy is under attack, it's important for our community to understand that it is ours, that we are part of this democracy and we have a right to it just like everyone else, even if other people are trying to retell that story. And I think, Jay, that is what grounds us. And that is what is grounding us as we move into this annual legislative conference. We are not going away as a people. We are not shying away. And we're going to stand up and show our pride in this democracy because it belongs to us. It belongs to everyone. And we don't think that certain groups over another have a right to it more than any other. And we're very clear-eyed on our right to this democracy. And because of that understanding, and because of the understanding of that history, Jay, that means that we know we have a stake in protecting it and advancing it. And I think not only our young people, but I think our lawmakers, and I don't want to speak for anyone, but so this is my assessment based on my work, is that I think lawmakers, young people, scholars, community activists, and grassroots activists all see this as an opportunity, a challenging opportunity, albeit, but an opportunity nonetheless to shape this democracy forward in a way that we think it needs to be shaped, which is what we did in the past. When it came to Reconstruction, When we go back to the Jim Crow era, when we go back to the early 1900s, and we go back to post World War II, and we go back to the start of civil rights, our community was very clear eyed that this is ours, and we are going to do what we have to do to protect it and advance it. We are at a similar moment right now. And we also know historically, Jay, that even in these moments of peril and challenge, we as a community have taken it as an opportunity to dig deep, to put our heads down, not down as in being depressed, but down as in let's roll up our sleeves and get down to business and figure out how we move us ahead. And that's what the historical cycles have shown us. That when we have had these moments of challenges, we have strategized and we have figured out how to move past them and how to move to a higher level of greatness. And I think what our young people are showing, what our leaders across the country are showing is that they understand that's what this moment is. So when you earlier in the conversation, Jay, talked about how are you going to show up? How are you going to be in this moment of history? I think that is what I am seeing writ large in the various communities that we are working with. So we're not deterred. We are made for this moment, understanding that we have work to do, understanding that it's going to be hard, but also understanding and being confident in the fact that our people are resilient. We have survived the Middle Passage and everything since then, and that we will survive this, and that on the other end of this and on the other side of this, Jay, we will be a stronger, smarter, and better equipped people with stronger communities because we know how to take challenges and turn those challenges into moments of opportunity to present tools and to present ways forward for our communities to be even stronger and better. And so that's what I'm seeing anecdotally as I talk to and just focus on the young people, the lawmakers, the other major organizations that are doing this work. I think that is what I'm walking away with. And I think that's what we're going to see on display at the annual legislative conference, September 24th through the 28th.
All right. Now, we normally, thank you for that answer. We normally do our sort of get on the box type of thing. It's going to be hard for me to follow that. I will admit. But that was no, it's an excellent answer. I mean, look, I think Black people being resilient in these moments. I mean, we've done it our entire history of being in this country,
Yes,
and it's not to downplay the seriousness of this moment.
not
Obviously,
at
no one
all.
should.
Not at all.
Not that anyone should or is, um, but we do have to realize like we have this in us. Maybe our generation has not gone through what previous generations have gone through, but we have this in us very much to survive this and almost thrive in these moments of uncertainty because we've always had to, you
Yes,
know.
exactly.
Um, so I'm really and I'll do my standing on the box thing here right now. Is I'm really proud of having conversations with folks like yourself who run these organizations, like the CBCF, because it does give me hope that and more than just hope, but it allows me to realize just how some people are not just talking about it; they're about it, right? And they
Exactly.
are doing the real work and understanding that this moment is very unique and is very serious, but there are very unique and very serious Black folks who see that and they are working to keep us afloat. And I
Yes.
think
Yes.
that's important.
And can I
So
just add this
yeah,
caveat, Jay? It's not
sure,
only about those leaders, it's about your listeners.
yeah,
I always want to remind people that each one of us has it in us and has an opportunity to lead and be a change maker right where you stand. You don't have to
absolutely.
have some fancy title behind your name. I tell people they could call me dog catcher. I am going to be the Nicole I was before I had this title, and I'm going to be the Nicole I was after I have this title because it is about being invested in our communities and protecting them and growing them. So I want everyone to know that they have that power right where they stand in their local churches, in their local civic communities. Look right where you are and think about and figure out where can I stand and where can I make a difference right where I am, because it's us doing that throughout the country and in all the communities that we represent that's going to lead us to a place of victory. It's not about looking to one leader or one organization. It's about
Right.
all of us figuring out what is our part and what is our role and standing up and accepting it and doing it and achieving it.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you for that. So I'll just end it here and steal a quote from a previous guest that we had, which is in reference to you guys making making these connections to these young people and building these relationships and pushing them out into Congress, into corporate boardrooms, and making those changes internally that will affect us externally going forward, I think is really powerful. And the quote was, "Life moves at the speed of relationships," and I just think that is such a great quote.
Yes,
And when we have these connections and we have these relationships with one another in our community, you never know where one of your interns ends up as a senator years later,
exactly.
working with somebody else that they were in the same cohort with who wasn't an intern, but they're now at a corporation.
Exactly.
You don't know where you end up, and
Hmm.
building these relationships are so incredibly powerful that it's like, hey, Susan, Jim, I remember you, and then it's like, all right,
Exactly.
let's work to fix this thing together. And that familiarity is something that other groups have long had in those spaces that we have not. So I appreciate the CBCF being an institute that allows for those things to happen.
Oh,
So
you're
that's,
welcome. You're welcome.
yeah,
And we
so,
have that now, Jay,
right.
for folks. Congresswoman Lauren Underwood, just as a quick example, is a former CBCF intern, and there she sits now in the U.S.
There you go.
Congress. So there you go.
There you go. Excellent. So I'm off the box. I'm going to allow you to get on the box and let people know what should they take away from this conversation.
I want them to take away three things, Jay. Number one, that there is light at the end of the tunnel, that we will get through this moment and we will come out a stronger and more resilient people. Number two, make certain that you are not shying away from this moment. Lean into it. Have conversations with your neighbors, with your family members. We all need to make sure that we are connected around what is going on now. And we can't not talk about it. We have to face it because there is power in facing it and there's power in facing it together. And then lastly, show up and show out. Show up at the annual legislative conference. Show up at other places and spaces where conversations are being had, where leaders are in place to hear from you, to give you feedback. That is how we will mobilize. That is how we will create change. And that is how we will be successful. And then I lied, Jay. I have a fourth point.
Go for it.
Remember that you are great. You come from greatness, and greatness lies within you, and you have an opportunity in this moment to stand up and be counted and be heard, and we need you, and that is what's going to make the difference, and that is the story that we want history to tell about this moment and about our people.
Excellent. It's a perfect ending. Thank you very much for that. Nicole Austin-Hillery, thank you, President and CEO of the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. Look, make sure if you are in DC, Nicole, can you give us that date one more time for the annual legislative
Yes, September
conference?
24th through September 28th at the Walter E. Washington Conference Center in Washington, D.C. And you are quite welcome, Jay. Thank you for having me on today.
All right. All right. We will see you guys next week for another episode of the Chicken Box.